In Slavic mythology, Morana was known as the goddess of death and winter. She is also known as Marzana or Mara. Her presence brought with it intense cold and the coming of hard times. The Slavs feared her power but still worshipped her. Morana not only brought the deadly frost, but represented the cycle of nature, where death and rebirth were inevitable parts of the world. Winter, under Morana, was a harsh time for Slavic communities. During those months, the nights were endless and the cold was almost unbearable. The villagers sheltered in their houses, gathering around the fire to keep the cold from creeping in through the cracks. They guarded the crops so much, knowing their survival until spring depended on that food. Morana was a terrifying but real figure, moving through the snowy fields. Her icy breath killed everything she touched. Stories told that her gaze could freeze water and her touch caused plants to wither. However, she was also said to be righteous, as her control over death and winter was a necessary part of nature's cycle. In artistic depictions and rituals, Morana was shown as a pale, beautiful woman with long, dark hair that blended into the night. She often wore a crown of dried branches and wilted flowers, an image that captured her dual essence of beauty and desolation. According to legends that have endured over the centuries, Morana is narrated to be the sister of Jarilo, the god of spring and fertility. While Jarilo symbolizes the life, growth, and abundance that flourishes in the warmer months, Morana takes on the equally significant role of death and rest. Each year, as the cold began to recede and the first signs of spring would appear, Jarilo, the god of spring, would return to confront Morana. Jarilo was the god of fertility and rebirth. His warm and vibrant energy contrasted with Morana's coldness and power. This confrontation was not a physical struggle, but a battle of opposing forces. Jarilo came with the promise of a new life. Flowers were beginning to bloom, and animals were coming out of hibernation. On the other hand, Morana, with her icy gaze, was trying to maintain her dominance. She did not give up easily, and her gelidness could still be felt in the last frosts of the season. The encounter between Morana and Jarilo could be felt on the earth. It was as if nature itself was divided between winter and spring. In this change, life and death clashed. Morana's resistance was strong, but Jarilo brought with him the strength of renewal. Day by day, his warmth gained ground, melting the snow and allowing life to flourish. Finally, like every year, Morana gave in. She slowly retreated, accepting her fate. Spring triumphed, and with it, Jarilo brought longer and warmer days. The cycle of nature took its course, and the land once again became fertile and full of life. Morana, although defeated, knew that her time would come again, and with that certainty, she retired to wait for the next winter. Legend also tells that Morana, the powerful goddess of death and winter, had been the lover of Dazbog, the resplendent god of the sun. However, this idol was abruptly broken when Dazbog, seduced by another, abandoned Morana without remorse. The betrayal wounded Morana, who in her anger vowed revenge on Dazbog. In an impulse of fury, Morana unleashed his power, trying to bring darkness and cold where once there was light and warmth. But Dazbog, becoming a sun god, could not allow Morana's darkness to prevail. Confronting her with all his strength, he burned her, his solar radiance enveloping her figure in a purifying fire. This event not only physically wounded Morana, but also banished her from the heavens. Dazbog, knowing that he could not simply destroy a goddess, decided to send her to Nav, the underworld. There, Morana found a new purpose. Far from being destroyed, she was transformed. In the shadows of the underworld, she became the ruler of the dead, accepting her new role. In Nav, Morana ruled over lost souls and wandering spirits. Although she was banished and burned, she found in her grief a new way to exist. The The Slavs feared the coming of winter like a shadow. Morana, the goddess who ruled this season, brought with her the cold that froze the earth and made it difficult to obtain food. The days became shorter, and the nights were long and icy. The wind, laden with ice, battered the villagers' huts, making the wood creak and seeping through the cracks. Crops were stored carefully, knowing that every grain of wheat and every root vegetable could mean the difference between life and death. Animals, too, were guarded, for losing one of them could become catastrophic. Morana was not only the bearer of physical cold, but also of a kind of spiritual desolation. Winter under her reign was not just a season, but a state of existence where hope weakened and the struggle to survive became more arduous. The land, covered in snow, seemed dead and silent, and every day was a battle to find enough warmth and food. The fear of Morana and its winter was not only limited to cold and hunger. Diseases also spread more easily in the cold, and the body's defenses were weakened. The elderly and children were the most vulnerable, and every loss was felt in the community. With the arrival of spring, the ancient Slavs prepared for an event that marked the end of winter. This holiday, known as the Drowning of Marzana, was a rite awaited by everyone in the community. The ritual began with the creation of a straw effigy representing Morana. The villagers would gather, each contributing some straw and old clothes to dress the figure. Once the figure was ready, the entire community would gather for the parade. Old and young, men and women, would walk together to the nearest river or lake. Along the way, they would sing traditional songs and utter incantations to ward off the cold and darkness that Morana brought. Drums and flutes accompanied the singing, creating a festive and hopeful atmosphere. Upon reaching the shore, a bonfire was lit. The figure of Morana was placed over the flames, and everyone watched as the fire consumed the straw. Then the ashes and remains of the effigy were thrown into the water. The sound of splashing echoed as the current carried Morana's remains away, signaling the end of winter. After the ceremony, the villagers returned to the village, where a great feast awaited them. Tables were laden with food and wine was constantly being poured. This ritual not only signaled the change of season, but also strengthened the sense of community and the cycle of life. By burning and drowning the effigy, the Slavs expelled cold and sadness, welcoming with joy the rebirth of nature and the arrival of warmer times. Thus, the Drowning of Marzana became a long-awaited event, announcing that spring and renewal were near. This video has been created for the Myth Comics channel. Thanks for joining us in a new story. See you soon.